To the future, Damian said, his voice smooth like velvet. He raised his crystal flute high, catching the light of the chandelier. And to the woman who made it all possible. I smiled, feeling a blush heat my cheeks. To us, Damian. To the launch. To us, he echoed, though his eyes didn't quite meet mine. I tipped the glass back, letting the expensive champagne slide down my throat. It was cold, crisp, but it left a strange, bitter aftertaste on my tongue. I ignored it. Tonight was too perfect to worry about the quality of the wine. After 5 years of sleepless nights, coding until my fingers cramped, and pouring my entire inheritance into Damian's company, we had finally done it. Our stock was public. We were billionaires. Are you happy, Elara? Chloe asked, stepping up beside Damian. My stepsister wore a red dress that was far too expensive for her salary as an intern, but I had never questioned it before. I'm thrilled, Chloe, I said, reaching out to squeeze her hand. We're finally safe. The algorithm works perfectly. Yes, Chloe said, her smile widening into something sharp. It does, that's the important part, isn't it? Suddenly, the room tilted. The champagne glass slipped from my fingers and shattered against the marble floor. A sharp pain ripped through my stomach, twisting my insides into knots. Damian, I gasped, clutching the edge of the table. I don't feel well. I expected him to rush to me. I expected his strong arms to catch me. Instead, he took a calm sip of his drink and wrapped his arm around Chloe's waist. Damian? I choked out, my legs giving way. I collapsed to my knees, gasping for air. Help me. Why should I? Damian asked, looking down at me with cold indifference. The code is finished, Elara. The IP rights are transferred. You've served your purpose. My vision blurred, darkness creeping in at the edges. What are you saying? He's saying you're fired, sister. Chloe giggled, leaning her head on Damian's shoulder. And honestly, it's about time. Do you know how exhausting it was pretending to like you? But I love you, I whispered, tears spilling hot onto my cheeks. I gave you everything. You gave me a stepping stone, Damian corrected. He crouched down, his face close to mine, but there was no love in his eyes, only greed. You were just the bridge to get me here. And now that I've crossed it, I can burn it down. Goodbye, Elara, Chloe said, waving her fingers. My lungs seized. The pain became unbearable, a fire consuming my entire body. I reached out one last time, my fingers brushing Damian's shoe, but he kicked my hand away in disgust. I trusted you, I thought, as the darkness swallowed me whole. I loved you, and you killed me. The silence was absolute. Then, gasp, my eyes snapped open. I sat up violently, my lungs sucking in greedy gulps of air. My hands flew to my throat, clawing at skin that felt unbroken, unburned. No, I panted, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I looked around frantically. I wasn't on the cold marble floor of the banquet hall. I was in my old bedroom. The sunlight was streaming through the sheer curtains, the ones I had thrown away 3 years ago when I moved into Damian's penthouse. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone from the nightstand. The screen lit up. September 12th, 2022, I froze, my breath caught in my throat. 3 years, I whispered, my voice trembling. I'm back. I looked at the date again. This was exactly 1 week before I was scheduled to hand over the final source code for Project Ether to Damian. 1 week before I signed my life away. I scrambled out of bed and ran to the mirror. The face staring back at me wasn't the pale, dying woman on the floor. It was me, younger, healthier, and alive. My phone buzzed. A text message popped up. Damian, my love. Good morning, beautiful. Don't forget to bring the prototype to dinner tonight. I can't wait to see what you've built for us. I stared at the words, the memory of his shoe kicking my dying hand flashing in my mind. The fear in my chest began to fade, replaced by a cold, hard knot of anger. For us, I read aloud, my voice dropping to a whisper. I deleted the message. I looked at myself in the mirror, my eyes narrowing. You killed me once, Damian, I said to the empty room. But you won't get the chance to do it again. I wiped the sweat from my forehead and stood up straighter. This time, I vowed, I'm going to take everything. Pass the wine, would you, darling? Damian asked, his voice dripping with that familiar, charming arrogance. I reached for the bottle, my hand steady despite the violent urge to smash it over his head. I poured the dark red liquid into his glass, watching it swirl. Here you go, I said, forcing the corners of my lips upward into a soft smile. He took a sip, sighing contentedly. You're too good to me, Elara. Most fiancés would be nagging about wedding plans or the guest list, but you? You're working day and night to make me rich. I just want you to succeed, Damian, I replied. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. Project Ether is my gift to you. He reached across the mahogany table, covering my hand with his. His palm was warm, damp. In my past life, I would have melted at this touch. Now I had to fight the physical reflex to recoil in disgust. Speaking of the project, he said, his grip tightening slightly, his eyes sharpening. Is the prototype ready? The board wants a demo on Monday. I need to show them something solid. It's almost there, I lied smoothly. But I found a small optimization issue in the user interface. I need a few more days to make it perfect for you. He frowned, tapping his fingers on the table. Perfect is good, Elara, but done is better. Don't overthink it. Just get it ready for the transfer. I promise, I said, looking him dead in the eye. It will be everything you deserve, and less. Later that night, I sat alone in my study, the blue glow of the monitor illuminating the darkness. Don't make me wait, I muttered, mimicking his demanding tone. Oh, I won't. I opened the source code. It was beautiful, elegant, fast, revolutionary. It was my soul in digital form. And there was no way in hell Damian was touching it. I opened a new file labeled project_ether_release. I copied the interface, the shiny outer shell that Damian cared about, but I gutted the engine. Then I began to type the poison. If date launch_day +7, initiate_data_corruption. It was a simple logic bomb. For the first week, the software would run like a dream. But on day 8, deep in the system architecture, it would start eating itself from the inside out. It would look like a catastrophic failure of the core code. Enjoy your gift, Damian, I whispered, hitting save. The next morning, I walked into Damian's office building. I wasn't there to see him. I made a beeline for the back corner near the noisy server rooms where the junior developers were stuffed into tiny cubicles. Sarah was there, her head buried in a stack of printouts. She looked exhausted, her glasses sliding down her nose. Sarah? I called out softly. She jumped, nearly knocking over her cold coffee. Miss Vance. I was just working on the debugging logs. I wasn't sleeping, I promise. Relax, I said, pulling up a spare chair. I'm not here to yell at you. In fact, I know you're the one who fixed the server crash last Tuesday. Her eyes widened behind her glasses. Mr. Cross said he fixed that. Mr. Cross doesn't know how to code in Python, I said dryly. I know it was you. And I also know he plans to let you go at the end of the month to cut cost. Sarah's face crumbled. He is? But I need this job. My rent? No, I said firmly, leaning in close so the other employees couldn't hear. You need a better job. I don't understand. I'm starting something, I whispered, checking over my shoulder to ensure Damian wasn't around. Something private. A surprise startup that Damian knows nothing about. I need a lead developer who actually knows what they are doing. Me? Sarah squeaked. But I'm just a junior. You're the only person here with a brain, I countered. I'll pay you double what Damian pays. Cash. But you have to keep it a complete secret. Can you do that? Sarah looked at the dreary gray cubicle walls, then at me. Her expression shifted from fear to a spark of determination. When do we start? She asked. Right now, I smiled, standing up. Welcome to the winning side. I checked the time on my phone. 8:02 a.m. Right on time, I whispered to myself, smoothing the lapel of my blazer. I was standing outside the Gilded Bean, a quiet, unassuming coffee shop tucked away in the financial district. In my past life, Damian used to rant about this place. He hated it because Julian Thorne, his biggest rival, drank his morning espresso here every single day undisturbed. Damian called Julian a pretentious hermit. I called him my only hope. My family's money was locked tight behind a wall of tradition. My father had made it clear. Elara, why do you need investment funds? You're marrying Damian. His success is your success. They refused to see me as anything other than a wife in training. If I wanted to destroy Damian, I needed a war chest that my father couldn't control. I pushed open the glass door. The smell of roasted beans hit me instantly. I scanned the room and found him immediately. Julian Thorne sat in the back corner wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than my car. He was reading a financial newspaper, his expression unreadable, stoic. He looked exactly as I remembered, intimidating and utterly unapproachable. I didn't hesitate. I walked straight to his table and pulled out the chair opposite him. He didn't look up. This seat is taken. It is now, I said, setting my tablet down on the table with a soft thud. Julian lowered the paper slowly. His eyes were a piercing, icy blue. He stared at me for a long moment, not with attraction, but with calculation. Elara Vance, he said, his voice deep and devoid of warmth. Damian Cross's fiancé. Did you get lost on the way to the bridal boutique? I'm not here to talk about dresses, Mr. Thorne, and I'm certainly not here on Damian's behalf. Then you're wasting my time, he said, lifting his paper again. I don't do charity for bored socialites. I'm offering you $1 billion, I said calmly. Julian paused. The paper didn't move, but his eyes flicked back to me. I'm listening. You have 60 seconds. I unlocked the tablet and slid it across the polished wood. You've been trying to crack the latency issue in high-frequency trading algorithms for 2 years. Your team is stuck at 12 milliseconds. He raised an eyebrow, and that, I pointed to the screen, is a kernel that runs at 4 milliseconds, stable. Julian looked at the screen. He scanned the lines of code, his expression bored at first. Then his eyes narrowed. He leaned in closer. He swiped to the next page, then the next, his reading speed accelerating. This syntax, he muttered, more to himself than me. It's aggressive. It bypasses the standard protocols completely. He looked up, his gaze sharp. Who wrote this? Did Damian hire a new team? Damian couldn't write a Hello World program if his life depended on it, I scoffed. I wrote it. Julian studied my face, looking for a lie. You? Every line, I confirmed. This is the real Project Ether, the version Damian is about to launch? It's a hollow shell. I'm keeping the engine for myself. He leaned back, crossing his arms. The skepticism was fading, replaced by intrigue. Why bring this to me? If this code is real, you could take it anywhere. Because I need more than money, Julian. I need a partner who knows how to keep a secret. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. I need funding to build a new company. Phoenix Tech. But my name cannot appear on any paperwork until the trap I've set for Damian snaps shut. You want to play both sides, he observed. Stay the fiancé by day and the competitor by night. I want to destroy him, I corrected, my voice dropping to a harsh whisper. I want him to climb to the very top of the world, thinking he's won, and then I want to kick the ladder out from under him. And I want to build my empire on the ruins of his. Julian stared at me. The silence stretched between us, heavy and tense. I didn't blink. I let him see the cold, hard hatred burning behind my eyes. I let him see the woman who had died on a marble floor. A slow, rare smile touched the corner of his lips. You're dangerous, Miss Vance, he said softly. Is that a yes? 40%, he stated. I put up the capital through a shell corporation in the Caymans. You run the operations. If the code fails, I own you. If it succeeds, we split the market. 30%, I countered. 40, he said, his eyes locking with mine. Because I'm also buying the front row seat to watch you execute Damian Cross. I held his gaze. Deal, he extended his hand. Welcome to the game, Elara. I shook it. His grip was firm, solid. For the first time since I woke up gasping for air, I didn't feel alone. I had a weapon and now I had an army. It's just a formality, Elara, Damian said, pacing around my living room. He checked his watch for the 3rd time in a minute. We really need to get this filed before the weekend. Sitting on my plush sofa was Marcus, Damian's lawyer. He was a small man with a greasy smile and a suit that looked expensive but fit poorly. He held a thick stack of documents on his lap, tapping a gold pen against the paper. Damian is right, Miss Vance, Marcus said, his voice oily and condescending. This contract simply secures the copyright of Project Ether under the company umbrella. It protects you from liability. If someone sues, they sue the company, not you personally. We are doing this for your safety. For my safety, I repeated, widening my eyes innocently. That's so thoughtful of you both. In my previous life, I had been so touched by their concern that I signed the papers without reading a single sentence. I had handed over my life's work with a smile. Exactly, Damian said, stopping his pacing to rest a hand on my shoulder. I don't want you stressing about legal jargon. You're the creative genius. Let Marcus and me handle the boring business side. Well, I said, reaching for the documents. I suppose I should at least skim it. My father always told me never to sign anything blindly. A flash of annoyance crossed Damian's face, but he hid it quickly. Of course, babe. Read away. I flipped through the pages. The legal text was dense, but I knew what I was looking for. I found it on page 12, buried in a paragraph about asset liquidation. Clause 84. The creator, Elara Vance, hereby transfers 100% of all intellectual property rights, source codes, and future iterations of Project Ether to the holder, Damian Cross. The creator waives all rights to royalties, ownership, or credit. It wasn't a protection agreement. It was a theft. Marcus, I asked, pointing to the paragraph. This part here says I waive all rights to credit. Does that mean my name won't be on the patent? Marcus didn't even blink. Standard boilerplate language, Miss Vance. It just streamlines the filing process. Damian will obviously credit you in the press releases. This is just for the government paperwork. It means nothing. It means nothing, I echoed. Okay, I picked up the pen. My heart was pounding, not from fear, but from the thrill of the game. I signed my name at the bottom of the page with a flourish. There, I said, handing the stack back to Marcus. All yours. Marcus snatched the papers eagerly, stuffing them into his briefcase as if he were afraid I'd changed my mind. And the source code? Damian asked, extending his hand. Do you have the master drive? Right here, I said. I reached into the pocket of my cardigan. My fingers brushed against two identical black USB drives. One held the billion-dollar algorithm. The other held the corrupted dummy version, the flawed blueprint I had created the night before. I gripped the fake drive. Here's the key to our future, Damian, I said, placing the cool metal into his palm. He closed his fingers around it tight. You've done good, Elara, really good. I'm just glad I could help, I said, forcing a shy smile. I can't wait for the launch. It's going to be historic, Marcus chuckled, standing up and buttoning his jacket. We'll make sure the paperwork is processed tonight. Let's go, Marcus, Damian said, already heading for the door without waiting for me. He paused at the threshold, glancing back. I'll probably be late tonight. Don't wait up. I won't, I promised. The door clicked shut. I listened to their footsteps fade down the hallway. I walked to the window and watched them get into Damian's car. I saw Damian hold up the USB drive triumphantly, laughing at something Marcus said. They were celebrating their victory. They thought they had just stripped me of everything. I pulled the real USB drive out of my pocket and held it up to the light. You have the casing, Damian, I whispered to the glass. But I still have the engine. A rush of adrenaline surged through my veins, sharper and more potent than any drug. I had just handed my enemy a loaded gun that would explode in his face, and he had thanked me for it. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for the snap. Elara, you're barely touching your roast, Aunt Beatrice scolded, pointing her fork at my plate like a weapon. You look pale. Is this what happens when a woman tries to do a man's job? I forced my grip to relax on my knife. I'm just tired, Aunt Beatrice. It's been a long week. That's exactly my point, she sniffed, adjusting her pearl necklace. Damian is out there conquering the world, securing the family fortune, and you're hunched over a computer screen. It's not becoming of a cross wife. You look like a librarian, Chloe giggled from across the table. She reached for the water pitcher, and the sleeve of her cream silk blouse slid up. Light flashed off diamonds. I froze. Wrapped around her wrist was a delicate tennis bracelet, white gold with sapphires. I knew that bracelet intimately. In my past life, I had seen the charge on my credit card statement, $5,000. When I'd asked Damian about it, he told me he had bought it for his mother's birthday. I felt a flash of hot anger, but I swallowed it down with a mouthful of cold water. That's beautiful, Chloe, I said, my voice steady. Is it new? Chloe pulled her sleeve down quickly, a smirk playing on her lips. She met my eyes, daring me to say more. Oh, this? It was a gift. From a friend. A very generous friend, Aunt Beatrice added with a wink. Someone who knows how to treat a lady. Unlike you, Elara, who insists on buying her own things like a commoner. I like being independent, I said softly. Independence is lonely, Beatrice countered, leaning in. You need to let Damian take care of you. Stop meddling in his business. You'll only confuse things with your little codes. Men don't want partners, Elara, they want peace. I put my fork down. This was the moment. You're right, I sighed, letting my shoulders slump in defeat. Beatrice blinked, surprised by my surrender. I am? Completely, I said, looking from her to Chloe. I realized today that I'm just getting in the way. I'm stressing Damian out. Well, Chloe said, raising an eyebrow. At least you admit it. That's why I've decided to stop, I announced. Stop what? Aunt Beatrice asked suspiciously. Coding, I lied effortlessly. I transferred everything to Damian yesterday. I'm done. From now on, I'm going to focus entirely on planning the wedding. I want to be the perfect docile wife he deserves. Beatrice clapped her hands together, her face lighting up. Oh, finally. I knew you'd come to your senses. That's great news, Elara, Chloe said, her eyes gleaming. She thought she had won. She thought I was stepping aside so she could take my place next to the CEO without any interference. I'm going to be very busy with florists and caterers, I added, picking up my wine glass. So I might be out of the house a lot during the day. I want everything to be perfect. Of course, dear, Beatrice beamed. Take all the time you need. Don't worry about dinner. Chloe and I will handle things here. I smiled back, hiding the wolf behind the sheep's mask. They thought I was picking out centerpieces. In reality, my days were already booked. Not with florists, but with Sarah and Julian. While Damian prepared to launch a broken product, we were in a rented basement office, building Phoenix Tech into a weapon that would shatter their entire world. To the bride, Chloe toasted mockingly, raising her glass. To the future, I replied, clinking my glass against hers. Smile, Elara, Damian whispered, his fingers digging painfully into the soft flesh of my waist. Mr. Henderson is looking this way. You look like you're attending a funeral. I smoothed the silk of my emerald evening gown and pasted on the mask of adoration I had perfected over the last few weeks. I'm smiling, darling, I replied, keeping my voice low and sweet. I'm just overwhelmed by the crowd. Everyone is here to see you. Damian scoffed softly, adjusting his silk tie with his free hand. They're here to see the money. And tonight I'm going to make sure Mr. Henderson gives us all of it. Just remember the plan. Stand there, look pretty, and don't say a word about the technical side. Leave the genius talk to me. Of course, I murmured, lowering my lashes. I wouldn't dream of interrupting your moment. We navigated through the sea of tuxedos and designer dresses. Heading toward the VIP booth in the center of the ballroom, Arthur Henderson sat there like a king holding court. He was older than I remembered, with silver hair and eyes that looked like they could appraise the value of your soul in seconds. He was the whale, the investor whose checkbook could turn a startup into a global empire. Mr. Henderson, Damian said, his voice dropping an octave to sound more authoritative. It is an honor. Henderson didn't stand. He merely swirled the scotch in his glass and looked Damian up and down. Damian Cross, I hear you have something to show me. The market is buzzing about this Project Ether of yours. The buzz is justified, Damian said, his confidence radiating off him in waves. He pulled a sleek tablet from his jacket pocket. We've solved the latency issue. It's not just an update. It's a revolution. Show me, Henderson commanded. Damian unlocked the tablet and launched the application. It was the dummy version I had installed, the one with the shiny perfect interface and the hidden time bomb in the code. On the screen, graphs flowed smoothly and data processed instantly. Look at the transfer speeds, Damian pointed out, tapping the screen. Zero lag, secure encryption. We are years ahead of the competition. Henderson leaned forward, his eyes tracking the simulation. This UI is remarkably intuitive. Did you design this yourself? I oversaw every pixel. Damian lied without hesitation. I wanted it to be perfect. It's impressive, Henderson admitted, finally setting his drink down. If this scales, I'm prepared to offer $20 million for a 30% stake. Damon's eyes lit up greedily. That sounds like a conversation we should have. BZZT. A phone vibrated loudly on the table next to Henderson's hand. Then another notification chimed from a guest nearby. Ding. Ping. Within seconds, the ambient noise of the ballroom shifted. The polite chatter was replaced by the sound of hundreds of phones buzzing and beeping simultaneously. It was a digital wave washing over the room. What is that noise? Damian asked, looking around with irritation. Can't people silence their devices? Henderson ignored him. He picked up his phone, his brow furrowing as he read the notification on his screen. Did you see this? A woman at the next table whispered loudly to her husband. Phoenix Tech just went live. Open beta? The husband asked. Who are they? Look at the specs, someone else shouted from the bar. It's free to use for the first month. Damian stiffened. Phoenix? What are they talking about? Henderson looked up from his phone, the warmth gone from his eyes. He turned the screen toward Damian. A new platform just launched, Henderson said coldly. Phoenix Tech, they just released a global beta test 5 minutes ago. And Damian, their advertised processing speed is half of what you just showed me. Half? Damian stammered, blinking rapidly. That's impossible. No one has that technology. I have the only code. Apparently not, Henderson said, scrolling through the press release. They're claiming total market dominance. Tell me, Mr. Cross, is your software compatible with the new Phoenix standard? The what? Damian asked, his voice cracking. I don't know what that is. You don't know? Henderson stood up, buttoning his jacket. You just told me you were years ahead of the competition. Yet a company I've never heard of just made your product look obsolete in 10 seconds, and you don't know who they are? It's a glitch, Damian insisted, desperation creeping into his tone. It's a lie. Their numbers must be fake. I'm downloading their beta right now, Henderson said, holding up his phone. It's running perfectly, and it's fast. Very fast. Mr. Henderson, please, wait. Damian reached out, but the investor stepped back. I don't invest in second place, Mr. Cross, Henderson said dismissively. Excuse me. I need to make a call to find out who owns Phoenix Tech. He walked away, leaving Damian standing there with his mouth open, holding his tablet like a useless toy. Who? Damian hissed, turning to me, his face pale with shock. Who is doing this? I took a slow sip of my champagne, hiding the smirk that threatened to split my face. I don't know, darling, I said, my voice dripping with faux concern. But it sounds like you have a problem. $70 a share, Damian laughed, his voice crackling through the speakerphone. And the analysts said Phoenix Tech would kill us. They were wrong. People trust the brand, Elara. They trust me. I sat on my sofa, painting my nails a deep blood red. The TV was on mute, showing a graph of the company's stock climbing a steep green hill. I'm so proud of you, Damian, I said, keeping my voice flat. You really showed them. I did, didn't I? He gloated. I just put a deposit on the McLaren. You should see it, it's carbon black. A beast. You deserve it, I said. Enjoy the ride. I hung up. I looked at the digital clock on the wall. It was 1:59 p.m. 1 minute, I whispered. The logic bomb I had planted was set to trigger exactly 24 hours after the global server integration. It was designed to be silent at first, a ghost in the machine before turning into a monster. 2 p.m. Nothing happened for the first 10 seconds. Then my laptop screen, which was monitoring the public support forums, flickered. User 129. Hey, has anyone else's files just disappeared? Tech Guru, I just lost 3 terabytes of client data. What is happening? Crypto King, delete the app. It's wiping drives. It's a virus. I smiled, capping the bottle of nail polish. It had begun. 30 minutes later, my front door banged open. Damian didn't knock. He looked like a wild animal. His tie was undone, his hair disheveled, and his face was a mask of sheer terror. What did you do? He screamed, slamming the door behind him so hard the windows rattled. I stood up slowly, feigning confusion. Damian, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. The code. He roared, pacing frantically around my small living room. It's eating everything. The cloud backups, the local drives, it's deleting user data permanently. The investors are calling me. Mr. Henderson just threatened to sue me for fraud. The stock dropped 40% in 10 minutes. Fix it? You have to fix it now. Fix it? I blinked, widening my eyes in mock surprise. But Damian, I don't have access anymore, remember? You transferred all the admin rights to your account last week. You locked me out. I don't care about rights. Tell me the patch. Tell me how to stop the deletion loop. He grabbed my shoulders, shaking me hard. You wrote this trash. You made a mistake. I pulled away from his grip, stumbling back slightly to play the victim. A mistake? But you checked it. He froze, his chest heaving. What? The contract, I reminded him, my voice trembling with fake innocence. And the press conference yesterday. You told everyone on live television that you personally reviewed every line of code. You said you optimized the architecture yourself. That was just PR. He snapped, sweat dripping down his temple. You know, I didn't actually read it. I can't read that complex garbage. So I tilted my head, letting a confused frown mar my forehead. Are you telling me that you launched a product you didn't understand? That the CEO of a billion-dollar company doesn't know how his own software works? Stop playing games, Elara. He yelled. If this doesn't stop, I'm ruined. I need you to admit it was your error. I need you to tell the board you uploaded the wrong file. I can't do that, Damian, I said softly. Why not? Because that would be a lie. I gave you exactly what you asked for. If there's a flaw, surely a genius like you would have found it during the testing phase. He stared at me. He was cornered. If he admitted he hadn't written the code, he would be exposed as a fraud and stripped of his company. If he claimed the code was his, he was admitting to gross negligence and destroying millions of dollars of user data. You set me up, he whispered, the realization finally dawning in his eyes. I'm just your fiancé Damian, I said, sitting back down and blowing on my wet nails. I'm just the girl you fired, remember? His phone rang in his pocket. It was a jarring, loud ringtone. He stared at the screen. It was the legal department. Answer it, I suggested coldly. It sounds expensive. He looked at me one last time, a look of pure hatred mixed with fear, before turning around and running out the door. I listened to his footsteps retreat down the hall. Crash and burn, I whispered. He's in the lobby, Julian said, checking his watch. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of the boardroom, looking down at the city. He looks like he hasn't slept in 3 days. Good, I said, spinning my chair slowly to face the heavy oak doors. Let him simmer for another 5 minutes. Is this necessary, Elara? A gravelly voice asked from the corner of the room. I looked over at Grandfather Vance. The patriarch of our family sat with his cane resting against his knee, his face a mask of stern judgment. I had called him this morning, telling him that if he wanted to save the family name from total ruin, he needed to be in this room at noon. It is, Grandfather, I replied respectfully. You need to see exactly who you were betting the family fortune on. He says he has a buyer, Grandfather grunted. Some company called Phoenix Tech is offering to buy out his infrastructure to save him from bankruptcy. He asked me to come as a character witness. Phoenix Tech isn't saving him, I corrected. We're foreclosing on him. Before Grandfather could ask what I meant, the double doors swung open. Damian burst in. He looked wrecked. His eyes were bloodshot, his suit was wrinkled, and he smelled faintly of stale scotch. Thank God you're here, Grandfather! Damian exclaimed, rushing toward the old man without even looking at who was sitting at the head of the table. You have to help me with these people. They're sharks. They want to buy the company for pennies on the dollar. Sit down, Damian, Grandfather said, his voice cold. He didn't stand up to greet him. Damian froze, sensing the tension. He finally turned his head toward the main table. He saw Julian first. Thorn? Damian sneered, his lip curling. I should have known you were behind Phoenix Tech. You always were a vulture. I'm just the CFO, Damian, Julian said calmly, leaning back in his chair. I don't make the acquisition decisions. Then who does? Damian demanded, slamming his briefcase onto the table. I want to speak to the CEO now. I have intellectual property worth billions, and I'm not selling it to a rival without a fight. You don't have intellectual property, I said, my voice cutting through the air like a blade. You have a bricked server and a lawsuit. Damian whipped his head around. He blinked as if his brain couldn't process the image of me sitting in the CEO's leather chair. Elara? He let out a confused, jagged laugh. What are you doing here? Did you follow me to beg for forgiveness? Get out, this is a business meeting. I'm not going anywhere, Damian. Grandfather, tell her to leave. Damian shouted, pointing a shaking finger at me. She's insane, she sabotaged my code. I didn't sabotage your code, I said, standing up slowly. I pressed a button on the table and the glass wall behind me turned opaque, displaying the glowing red logo of a rising phoenix. I just took what was mine. Damian stared at the logo. Then he looked at me. I don't understand. I am the CEO of Phoenix Tech, I stated clearly. The silence that followed was deafening. Damian's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. No, he whispered. That's impossible. You plan weddings. You don't run companies. I wrote the algorithm you stole, I said, walking around the table until I stood right in front of him. And while you were busy bragging to the press, I built a better one. Phoenix Tech is the company you thought you had. The speed? The security? The billion-dollar valuation? That's all me. Damian staggered back, hitting the edge of the table. He looked at grandfather, desperate for an ally. Grandfather, she's lying. She's stealing from the family. Grandfather stood up, leaning heavily on his cane. He looked at Damian with pure disappointment. She didn't steal anything, boy. She outplayed you. You told me you wrote that code. You lied to my face. I had to, Damian cried. It was for us. For the legacy. There is no legacy left for you, grandfather said, turning his back on him. Damian turned back to me, his arrogance replaced by sheer panic. He grabbed my arm. Elara, please. You have to stop this. The users are suing me. The SEC is investigating. If you don't give me the patch to fix the deletion bug, I'm going to prison. I looked down at his hand on my sleeve. I gently peeled his fingers off, one by one. I won't fix it, Damian, I said softly. Why not? He begged, tears welling in his eyes. We were going to be married. Because I remember dying on that floor while you drank champagne, I thought, though I didn't say it aloud. Instead, I smiled a cold, sharp smile. You wanted my work? You have it. The corrupted version is all yours. I stole your future before you could even sign the contract. You're a monster, he sobbed. No, I replied, signaling security to enter the room. I'm a businesswoman. And you're trespassing. We have a contract, Elara, Damian shouted, his face twisting with desperation. Not the business one, the engagement. Under state law, any asset created during the engagement is subject to division. Phoenix Tech is a marital asset. I laughed. It was a dark, dry sound that bounced off the glass walls of the boardroom. You really want to bring the law into this? I asked, reaching into my designer bag. You want to talk about contracts and commitments? I pulled out a thick manila envelope and tossed it onto the polished mahogany table. It slid across the surface and stopped right in front of his shaking hands. What is this? He demanded, eyeing the envelope like it was a bomb. Your severance package, I said coldly. Open it. He tore the seal. Photographs spilled out, scattering over the table. They were grainy, taken from a distance, but they were unmistakable. Damian kissing Chloe in the elevator. Damian and Chloe checking into a hotel. Damian buying that sapphire bracelet for her while I was working late. His face drained of all color. He looked up at me, his mouth opening and closing silently. We aren't getting married, Damian, I stated, my voice sharp as cut glass. So there are no marital assets to divide. There is no us. There is just you and your mistress. You had me followed? He stammered. I just paid attention, I replied. Something you never did. I picked up my phone. The screen was already glowing with the draft I had prepared hours ago. And just so we are clear, I said, tapping my thumb against the screen. I'm not keeping this private. I'm not going to be the silent, suffering woman anymore. Don't, he warned, stepping forward, his hands reaching out. Elara, think about the stock price. Think about the scandal. Security stepped forward, blocking him instantly. I tapped the screen post. It's done, I said, turning the phone around to show him. Status, single. Reason, my fiance's been sleeping with my stepsister, Chloe, photos attached. You tagged her? He gasped, horror dawning in his eyes. Of course, I smiled, though it didn't reach my eyes. She wanted your attention so badly, didn't she? She wanted to take my place? Well, now she has the attention of the whole world. She can be the queen of the ashes. His phone started buzzing. Not with investor calls this time, but with relentless notifications. The internet was waking up. Look at the comments, I urged him. They're already calling for your head. Then a different ringtone cut through the noise. It was a harsh, demanding trill. That's grandfather, Damian whispered, staring at the caller ID in terror. Answer it, I commanded. Put it on speaker. He tapped the button with a trembling finger. Grandfather, listen, it's a misunderstanding. Silence. Grandfather's voice boomed through the room, shaking with rage. I just saw the post. Is it true? Did you dishonor this family with that leech, Chloe? It was a mistake. Damian cried. Your existence is a mistake, grandfather roared. I am freezing the trust funds. I am cutting off your mother, Beatrice, as well. She clearly raised a fool who thinks with a zipper instead of his brain. Do not come to the manor. Do not call me. You are on your own. The line went dead. Damian dropped the phone. He looked destroyed, physically shrinking into his suit. Chloe just texted me, he whispered, staring at the screen. She says she's moving out. She says she can't be associated with a bankrupt fraud. How quickly the rats flee the sinking ship, I mused, feeling a profound sense of satisfaction. She realized the money is gone. She loved me, he muttered, trying to believe his own lie. She loved your wallet, I corrected. And I just took that away. The betrayal you two planned for me? It just ate you alive. I stood up, gathering my coat. Go home, Damian. Oh wait, I paused at the door. The bank foreclosed on the penthouse an hour ago. You don't have a home. He's doing it, Sarah said, her voice tight with tension. She didn't knock. She just burst into my office, clutching her tablet like a shield. He's trying to run. I spun my chair around, my heart skipping a single hard beat. Show me, Sarah slammed the tablet onto my desk. On the screen, a progress bar was inching forward. It was a live feed of the banking protocols she had backdoored into Damian's system days ago. He's liquidating the employee pension fund, Sarah explained, pointing at the numbers, and the remaining vendor deposits. He's bundling it all into a single wire transfer directed to a shell account in Panama. $3 million. It's everything he has left. He's not just bankrupt, I murmured, watching the percentage climb. He's becoming a felon. Should I stop the transfer? Sarah asked, her finger hovering over the robot command she had coded. I can freeze the servers. We can save the money. No, I said, grabbing her wrist gently. Let him press send. But if we stop him now, it's just attempted fraud, I said, my voice cold and steady. If he sends that money, it's grand larceny and embezzlement. He needs to cross the line, Sarah. He needs to seal his own fate. We watched in silence as the bar hit 100%. Transfer complete. He just signed his life away, Sarah whispered. I picked up my phone and dialed the number I had saved 2 days ago. It rang once. Detective Graves, a rough, serious voice answered. It's Elara Vance, I said, staring out the window at the glass building across the street, Damian's office. He just moved the funds. We have the IP logs and the digital receipt. He's trying to flee. We're already in the lobby, Miss Vance, Graves replied, his tone professional and grim. We were monitoring the accounts as per your tip. Stay where you are. The line went dead. Come here, I told Sarah, waving her toward the window. You deserve to see this. We stood side by side, looking down at the chaotic street below. The afternoon traffic had stopped. 3 police cruisers screeched to a halt in front of Damian's building, their red and blue lights flashing violently against the gray pavement. There he is, Sarah gasped. The automatic doors of the lobby slid open. 2 uniformed officers marched out, gripping a figure between them. It was Damian. He wasn't wearing his suit jacket. His shirt was untucked, his hair wild. He was thrashing, kicking out at the officers, trying to pull away. Even through the thick glass of my office window, I could see the desperation in his movements. He looked like a trapped animal. Detective Graves stepped out behind them, holding a plastic evidence bag, Damian's laptop. Suddenly, Damian looked up. Maybe it was instinct, or maybe he just knew where I would be. He locked eyes with me across the street. He stopped struggling for a split second. Then he screamed. I couldn't hear the words through the glass, but I could read his lips perfectly. He was screaming my name. Elara, you did this. You ruined me. He's blaming you, Sarah said softly, hugging her arms around herself. Even now. Of course he is, I replied, watching the officers shove him into the back of the squad car. In his mind, he's the victim. He thinks the world owes him success. Do you feel bad? Sarah asked, looking at me cautiously. You loved him once. I watched the police car pull away, sirens wailing, cutting a path through the city traffic. I waited for the pang of guilt. I waited for the heartbreak or the pity. But there was nothing. Just a profound, quiet silence in my chest where the anxiety used to be. I don't feel bad, I answered honestly, turning away from the window. I feel light. It's over then? The revenge is over, I said, walking back to my desk and sitting down in the leather chair that felt more comfortable every day. He broke the law, Sarah. He stole from me, he stole from you, and he tried to steal from his own employees. I didn't ruin him. I just handed him the shovel, and he dug the hole himself. I looked at the paperwork on my desk, new contracts, new hires, the future of Phoenix Tech. That wasn't just revenge, I whispered to the empty room. That was justice. Elara, please. You have to help me. Chloe stood in the doorway of my office, tears streaming down her face. She looked nothing like the girl who had mocked me at the gala. Her hair was messy, her eyes were puffy, and she was wearing a cheap, thin jacket instead of her usual designer trench coat. "I have a meeting in 5 minutes, Chloe," I said, not looking up from the documents on my desk. "Make it quick." She rushed forward, gripping the edge of my mahogany desk with white knuckles. "I didn't know, Elara." I swear, Damian, he manipulated me. He told me he would ruin my life if I didn't go along with him. I never wanted to hurt you. I was scared. I finally looked up. I studied her face, searching for a shred of sincerity. All I saw was desperation. "You weren't scared, Chloe," I said calmly. "You were greedy. You didn't call me your sister when you were wearing that sapphire bracelet. You called me a stepping stone." "I was a fool," she sobbed, "but I'm family. Aunt Beatrice is cut off. Grandfather won't take my calls. I can't pay my rent. I'm going to be evicted tomorrow. Can't you just loan me a few thousand? Just until I get back on my feet?" "No," I stated. She blinked, stunned. "No?" "I built this company from a basement office while you were ordering room service on Damian's credit card," I said, leaning back in my chair. "I suggest you learn how to survive. I saw a help wanted sign at the diner down the street. They need dishwashers. You expect me to wash dishes?" She gasped, looking horrified. "I'm a Vance." "Not anymore," I replied, pressing the intercom button. "Security, please escort Miss Chloe out. She was just leaving to fill out a job application." "I hate you," she screamed as the guards dragged her away. "Get in line," I whispered. 2 days later, I walked through the heavy metal doors at the state penitentiary. The air smelled of bleach and stale sweat. I sat on the cold metal stool in the visitation booth. Through the thick glass partition, I saw him. Damian walked in. He was unrecognizable. His head was shaved, his face was gone, and the bright orange jumpsuit hung loosely on his frame. He looked broken. He sat down and picked up the phone. I did the same. "You came," he croaked, his voice raspy. "I wanted to see it," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "I wanted to see the king of tech in his new castle." "Why, Elara?" he asked, tears tracking through the grime on his cheeks. "Why did you go this far?" "We had everything. Was it just the cheating?" "We could have fixed that." "It wasn't the cheating, Damian." "Then what? Why do you hate me this much?" I leaned forward, pressing my forehead against the cold glass, staring deep into his terrified eyes. "Because I remember the taste," I whispered into the receiver. "What taste?" "The champagne," I said, my voice low and haunting. "I remember you handing me the glass. I remember the poison. I remember dying on the floor while you laughed." He recoiled, his face turning ghostly pale. You're crazy." "Am I?" I smiled, a cold, sharp thing. "I died once for you, Damian." "I wasn't going to do it twice." I hung up the phone. "Elara, wait," he shouted, slamming his hand against the glass, his eyes wide with horror. I didn't look back. I walked out of the prison and into the sunlight, leaving the ghost of my past life locked in a cage forever. "Stop staring at it, you're going to burn a hole in the paper," Sarah laughed, tossing a pen at me from across my massive glass desk. I blinked, pulling my gaze away from the magazine cover resting on the mahogany surface. It was Forbes. And right there, centered in bold, high-contrast photography, was my face. I wasn't smiling in the photo. I looked fierce, unyielding, my chin tilted up as if challenging the world to try and knock me down again. The headline screamed in gold letters, "The Algorithm Queen. How Elara Vance built a $3 billion empire in 6 months." "It's weird," I admitted, picking up the magazine. "In my last life, before all this, I used to read these articles and wonder what it felt like to be that important. I thought these people were gods. And now?" Sarah asked, leaning back in her chair, her feet propped up on her own desk. She wore a tailored suit now, a far cry from the oversized hoodies she used to hide in. "Now I know the truth," I said, tossing the magazine back down. "They aren't gods, Sarah. They're just the ones who survived the sharks." "Well, you didn't just survive the sharks, boss," Sarah grinned. "You ate them. The Q3 reports are in. Phoenix Tech isn't just a unicorn. We are the market leader in data security. We aren't competing anymore. We're ruling." I checked my watch. "I have to go." "Julian is waiting." "Don't let the money wait," Sarah teased. "He hates it when you call him that," I called back, grabbing my clutch. An hour later, the elevator doors slid open to the penthouse restaurant, The Pinnacle. The maître d' didn't ask for my name. He simply bowed and led me to the best table in the house, right by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. Julian was already there. He stood as I approached, smoothing his tie. "You're late," he noted, though there was no bite in his tone. "I was admiring my press coverage," I replied, sitting down as he pushed my chair in. "I saw it," Julian said, taking his seat opposite me. "You look dangerous." "Good," I smiled. That was the point. The waiter arrived with a silver bucket. He pulled out a bottle of vintage champagne the same year, the same label as the one Damian had opened the night he killed me. I froze, my breath hitched in my throat. Julian noticed immediately. He waved the waiter away before he could pop the cork. "We can send it back." I looked at the bottle. I looked at the condensation dripping down the glass. In my memory, that bottle represented betrayal, pain, and the cold darkness of death. But as I looked at Julian, my partner, the man who had backed me when I was nothing but a ghost with a grudge, I realized the bottle didn't have power over me anymore. "No," I said, my voice steady. "Open it?" Julian nodded at the waiter. The cork popped with a soft sigh. The golden liquid filled the flutes, fizzing cheerfully. "To the victors," Julian toasted, raising his glass. "To the survivors," I corrected. I lifted the glass. My hand didn't shake. I brought it to my lips and took a long, deliberate sip. I waited for the bitter aftertaste of poison. I waited for the pain. It never came. It was sweet. Crisp, cold, and undeniably sweet. "How is it?" Julian asked, watching me closely. "It tastes like freedom," I whispered. I set the glass down and looked out at the city. The lights twinkled below us like a sea of diamonds. Somewhere down there in the dark, Damian was sitting in a concrete cell. Somewhere Chloe was scrubbing tables. And here I was, sitting on top of the world. "So," Julian said, leaning forward, resting his elbows on the table. "You've done it, Elara. You have the fortune. You have the fame. You have your revenge. The board is asking what your next move is. Do we stabilize? Do we sell?" I laughed softly, turning my gaze from the city back to him. "Sell?" I asked. "Why would I sell when I'm just learning how to play? You aren't tired?" "I was tired when I was a victim," I said, feeling the fire in my chest burn brighter than ever. "I was tired when I was living for a man who didn't love me. But now I have an empire to run." I picked up the champagne glass again, catching my reflection in the window. I didn't see the girl who died on the floor. I saw a woman who had walked through hell and came out wearing a crown. "We don't stabilize, Julian," I said, clinking my glass against his one last time. "We expand." "I'm just getting started."